glad to see all these names. It's so fun to think that we are joining in and just get to talk about technology today. It's so cool. And I love Stacy. I don't know you, but I love you already because you found the chat. So we just want to highlight to you on the left side of the page, there's an attendee chat, and you can go ahead and comment and ask questions and say hello. Oh, I love you guys. What a great way to start my Tuesday. Thanks for joining in, and we can chat all about Google and all those things. And the reason I want to do that, let's just take a second and get our heads around some numbers. I know that's not very kind to start out the day talking about numbers, but this worldwide study was done a few years ago, and it showed results that a good quarter of the population cannot use a computer at all. Now, this study was done across 33 countries, people in all kinds of industries, and these were staggering results. When we look a little deeper at the ones who can use a computer and we try to discern how many have high functioning computer related abilities, only 5% of the people rank there. Are you one of the 5%? I'm totally not. I'm part of the 70% who aren't even shown on this screen. Have some computer skills, but wouldn't really call ourselves masters of it, because of the whole idea that technology is always changing and growing and adapting. And they say it makes it easier, but like, can I get an emoji, maybe the crying emoji, if you feel like technology does not always make your life easier? Because that, like, the struggle is real. Now your emoji button's at the top of your page. See, thank you, I totally agree. My husband's this like techie nerd, and he thinks technology is so fun all the time. And I'm like, this is supposed to make my life easier. And that's what they say about Google. So that's why we're going to talk on this today. To get that 5% figured out on who those people were that considered themselves masters, they not only understood the hardware, software relationship on computers, but they could take information from multiple platforms, multiple pieces of software, interpret that data, and then reshare it in another format. So there's a lot of steps involved using a lot of different apps, and then it really comes down to, did you take and manage the information in a really helpful way? Well, if you're part of the 26% who don't use a computer at all, which I know you're not because you signed on to any meeting today, and you deserve a gold star for that, so I'm just gonna go ahead and give you all 5,000 points today for being able to join any meeting, because sometimes that's tricky too. But if you're part of that 70% that feels like there's still so much to learn, I know what I'm doing in my job, and yet if I were to be plunked into another environment, I don't know how I would do. Well, you're sort of part of the rest of us in Manitoba, and that's really why Workplace Education Manitoba exists. Our whole programming, our philosophies are all centered around helping people to develop the essential skills that are needed for work, for learning, and for life. Now, to do that, we can't do that on our own. We get funding for that. And so we just love to take time during all of our sessions to give a shout out and thank those who have funded us. So to put curriculum together, the funding for that comes from ERSDC and Manitoba Education. And then to run the project and so on, we want to thank Human Resources, Skills Development Canada, and Entrepreneurship Training and Trade. And of course, our own website is there, and we just want to thank that keeps all things running at Workplace Education Manitoba. The vision is really to make sure all Manitobans get the training they need to succeed in the workplace. And we do that training on essential skills. Now, essential skills is kind of a random phrase to you probably, right? What are these 9 essential skills that they talk about? And I see some more logging on. Good morning. Well, today we're really focusing in on 2 of the 9 essential skills. We want to beef up our computer use skills or our digital technology, And we are doing this using our continuous learning skills. So keeping our brains learning through different platforms and different delivery methods so that we're continuously growing and developing in our careers. So you do get 5,000 points. Maybe Gail can pop up your points there for us, that you get another 5,000 just for joining us today and being a continuous learner. Well, I'm coming to you today as a part of this team, the Selkirk office where the Interlake West Centre is. But you know, Workplace Education Manitoba is not limited just to Selkirk. We have West Centres all over the province, so you're probably near one of these towns. And if you are, I welcome you to join us at one of our workplace education and skills training centers. We'd absolutely love to see you. And I know some of you have told me where you're from around the province. I know I saw Saugeen. I think I just see Winkler Morden now. Tell us what town you're coming to us from. I, of course, am coming to you from Selkirk, as I mentioned. Glad to be here. It's sunny and gorgeous in Selkirk today. So I'm super pumped that this week feels like summer again. Yay! Dauphin. I love Dauphin. I've been there so many times. So cool to see you joining in from there. Gilbert Plains I've not been to, but I think I will. That will be on my list. So let's jump in. Google Suite. What the heck is Google? What is Google Suite? Why does this all matter? Well, today you're getting sort of, you know, that base layer, like you're getting the very bottom part of the cake, but there's more to the cake and there's icing on top of it. And so if you want to eat more of the cake, a full picture, you can join us at a workshop that we have coming up. It's starting October 6th, and we'll take 3 sessions together to go deeper into Google and to get you in the place where you can manage documents in it, you can use their software, and we'll even give you some shortcuts and some tips and tricks so that in the office, you're a little bit of a Google savant. But for today, let's actually take a peek at why it matters and why Google's become a thing. Can I see a thumbs up emoji if you just seem to hear that Google, 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 Google just seems to be a word all the time? In fact, of course, we know that's a verb now, right? We're just using Google to mean, I'll Google that, I'll look something up. So it's like, man, I think I use a Microsoft computer, and yet everybody's talking about Google all the time. It's just so popular. So we kind of got to dial it way, way, way back to the beginning to understand why it has exploded as a thing. So let's just think about a computer and the parts to a computer. You joined on today and told me where you're from by using your keyboard, right? So that's how you were able to type things in with your keyboard. And then you have a mouse, and that might be detached from your computer. It might be a touchpad right on a laptop. And the mouse is moving your cursor around on the screen, which of course is the monitor that you're looking at. Well, that part all feels like English, right? But then we'll go into a little bit of hieroglyphics here. And inside your computer, you have a central processing unit, or a CPU. So you have the electrical parts that are making it happen. And then you also have random access memory, or you've heard the phrase RAM, right? You've been in Staples and tried to buy a computer and they're asking you, how much RAM do you need? And then you've also heard of OS. What's the OS? It's the operating system, or sort of the brand of how computers are running and how you're able to see things involving software. So this is sort of a key piece, because up until recently, Google really had nothing to do with any of this. You bought a computer that needed all of these things. Particularly, you needed a good RAM amount, and you needed a good operating system. And then maybe sort of one day you'd stumble into Google and open up a Gmail account or something like that. Well, now take a look at the bottom here. One of the operating systems is actually Chrome, which is Google's brand of an operating system and of a web browser. So not only had they joined in on developing an operating system, but they joined the game on all the other parts too. to have actual components and computers that they sell. So imagine standing, you've been in Best Buy, or I think Visions is maybe out of business, I don't know, Future Shop, all these computer places, Staples, and you're looking at buying a computer. What do you think is jacking up the price? What do you think, if I need a really good that part of it, it's going to be really expensive? Go ahead and just throw it in the chat for me. What do you think jacks up the cost of a computer? Laptop, desktop, whatever. So many things jack it up. It could be similar to a TV, that you could want a super giant monitor, and yeah, that would be more expensive than a smaller one, but absolutely the operating system is huge. And you hit the nail on the head there, Stacy, with mentioning RAM. Up until now, the amount of RAM and memory that you wanted really affected the cost of computers. And so they would ask you how much you wanted to spend, how much memory did you need, or like Gail mentioned, the hard drive, how much space do you need? Are you going to save lots of files? Well, nobody wants to run out of space. So yeah, let's buy tons and tons of RAM and spend thousands of dollars on this robust computer that has the memory inside of it. Well, what's the most critical part to have functioning? There might be something that's expensive, but there might be something else that's really critical to have a good part of. What do you think that is? Do you think that's the operating system? Do you think that's the hardware, like the actual piece of plastic that the computer is built together as? Do you think that's the memory? Do you think that's the processing unit? Just take a wild guess and tell me, what do you think is actually the most important part to have working well? Yeah, the central processing unit is key. If you're buying like a super cheap computer that you've never heard of the brand and nothing works on it, it's going to last you like maybe a year. And here we're not promoting brands. I don't actually believe that Google's the best brand. And so this isn't a sales pitch about Google. This is just to say that the way we've bought computers in the past were you had to have a really proven CPU, you had to have the name brand operating system. Like, are there any Mac people out there? Give me your thumbs up if you're like, I have the Apple tattoo, I only use Mac computers. There's a lot of people who pay more for that because it works for them. But really, Google sort of changed that up like a lot. And if we just do a little bit of history, think back, what was your first computer at a workplace or a first software program that you had to use? I remember a really groundbreaking thing was WordPerfect. Dell and HP, absolutely. Wasn't the really old computers we all first got at home a 486? Remember sitting waiting for that thing to load? A Commodore, yeah, data entry cards, totally. And so maybe you've come through this whole system where you understand that it used to be you had to have a giant computer with a great operating system, and you had to have the right software on that computer. Well, Google takes our heads and gives it a giant and says, wrong answer. We don't care what your computer is anymore. We don't care what the operating system is. You can use our Google products on anything. You can almost use it on a piece of plywood. Not really, but the actual computer doesn't matter anymore. So they wiggled their way into the market because the market used to look like this. There was the Microsoft brand, and you could buy all of their computers, and the Windows operating system worked perfectly on it. Or you could buy a Macintosh, and they had their own operating system. And it used to be hard to understand one or the other if you were committed to the opposite brand. They've made that a little bit easier now that you can download different versions there. But then Google sort of edged it in first with email. How many people, by a show of emoji, have an actual Gmail address, like an email address that's through Google? Lots of you do. Okay, so you've probably already noticed how having a Gmail address means you can access your email from anywhere. Now, don't be a little bit snooty and think that people know this. Because if you're old like me, if you're a bird, you know that email used to be only on the actual computer. So is there any like old bird like me that if you were sitting at your office computer, you could not access your email? It was directly downloaded to that device. So does anyone remember that out there? Or do you all only know email as a portable thing? Well, it used to be that way. And as Gmail emerged, and there were others, like Yahoo was in the scene with a huge presence, but, and others, Hotmail or whatever, but it changed that philosophy of understanding. It doesn't matter what device you're on anymore. If you can get to the internet, you can get to your Gmail. Now, maybe you're not as old as me, so you don't remember way back to even know who this is. Does anyone know who this is? I gotta see it in the chat. Who can name this character? Isn't he awesome? Right? Mr. T. So we think that the 80s was a long time ago, but actually those of us who learned computer systems then and in the 90s, it looks a lot different now, because now you're not buying the things that you needed then. Google, as they came bigger and bigger in the market through the early 2000s, they actually sort of erased the old way of thinking about computers. So it used to be that you needed a great computer that had a great CPU and a great operating system so that everything worked. But portability started to matter. And so things like laptops emerged first, and then tablets and portable data devices, and then, of course, cell phones. And what it meant is now everybody wanted remote access to everything, not just email anymore, but all of our files and all of our software, so that we could work from anywhere. Now, that's a blessing in disguise, right? There's a take it or leave it with being able to access from anywhere. But generally speaking, it's kind of handy. Well, we can thank Google for that, because they put themselves into the market by saying, hey, we're going to put people into a place of accessing software from absolutely anywhere. So remember your first office job? Your office had a piece of software that you could never afford to have at home, right? But now, as you got used to being able to access email from anywhere, you also got used to being able to want to access your actual files from anywhere. So no longer are you just chained to your desk. Now you can access the full Monty anywhere you are. And now you're not bound to paying $300 to $500 to have software installed on your device. It's just free. If you use Google, you do not have to buy software. Like, oh, mind blown. So if you're not buying software, it drastically changes the cost of your computer, because essentially you can use any computer with zero software installed, and as long as you can get to the internet, you have a full software package at your ready just by using Google. So they were a little bit of a game changer, because now they've come up with a computer. Anybody heard of a Chromebook? Give me an emoji if you hear Chromebook thrown around. Schools always ask kids to get Chromebooks. And really what the difference is a Chromebook is basically a giant phone. It's just sort of a way to get onto the internet. It's not actually a computer with software on it. It's just a device with a big screen that if you can get onto the internet, you can use software. And that software has nothing to do with the computer it's on. So generally speaking, Chromebooks are pretty cheap to buy. And really Google says, we want to give you all of our free software, and you can do anything from home with remote access as long as you have a Google account and a way to get online. So discussing these, do we think now of Google as just a virtual product, or do we think of it as an actual hardware piece? Question. It's both. So they wiggled their way into the market, being ones who said, Let's make email accessible, word processing accessible, software's accessible. Let's make it all accessible remotely and, establish a presence there. And in the meantime, let's start building and making computers, and let's undercut everybody in the market so that really everyone can own a device and get onto the Google software, no problem. So these are the ways that most people generally use Google. Now, there's over 200 Google products. So I'm not even going to go into that on this webinar. We can talk about those a little bit more in our workshop. But generally, these few are the ones that people camp out on. So of course, there's Gmail. You're free to use that now anywhere you travel in the world. Thanks for coming. Great to see you, Crystal. Visit weminterlake.ca if you want to sign up for the longer session. Gail can put that up in the chat. And Chrome, that's just that nice circle, colorful circle icon that you see probably on your desktop because it was installed for you. That's just your way to get onto the internet. And it's just automatically installed in most devices that you buy. And then Google Docs, which I quite enjoy. I love Microsoft Word. I do so much in it. But what I love about Google Docs is that for anyone who's new to word processing, Google Docs has a way simpler screen to look at and way easier features to find. They've even renamed some things that Microsoft Word does that I think are absolutely brilliant. And then you can't really function well in Google without understanding Google Drive. So feel free to do tutorials online about understanding Google Drive or join us for a longer workshop. And of course, almost everyone who uses an Android automatically uses Google Photos, whether they know they're using it or not. And it's a super robust photo program where you can search images, locations. It's phenomenal what it could do. I could totally geek out on you and we could camp out there, but probably your work doesn't require you to totally know what to do in Google Photos. But those would be the primary ones, and then also spreadsheets. So Google Sheets is a very, very user-friendly way to get your bearings on spreadsheets. And of course, they did change the market, which I mentioned anyway, because they've made an assumption that almost everybody can get online. And so if you can get online, why spend money on expensive software? Just use Google Sheets. Don't even pay for Microsoft Office. That's sort of the unspoken philosophy out there. And why would anyone want it, or why would anyone want to switch over from Microsoft or from Apple products? Well, you can design professional things without needing the software, so that's sort of huge. And then, of course, Google is just the absolute master in integration. So there's ways to use your Google Drive so that when you're inserting images, photos, when you're referring to other people on your team, it integrates it all. I could do note-taking in Google Notes, and when I'm taking notes on a meeting we had, as soon as I type in my colleague Gail's name, it can give me a one-click prompt. Do I want to send Gail an email for those notes? It's so integrated with your Gmail and even your live chats. So how many had to endure Zoom calls at the beginning of COVID? Were you like on Zoom at all? Give me an emoji if you have a Zoomer at the beginning. Learned that Zoom platform, and we understood you have to go to another website to be on. And then, of course, something like this. Thank you for joining us on the Any Meeting platform. Similar concept. Well, Google also integrated Google Meet in a neat way. That used to be something like Zoom, where you had to go to a website to find it. Well, they've just embedded it right into Gmail. So now I just encourage you to try it out in your Gmail, maybe after this session. Over on the left side where it has all your folders and your list of all of your historical emails, you'll see new down there, and it's Google Meet. And with one click, you can click right there with your email program, and you can start a quote Zoom session with someone. So you can have instant video chat just while you're sitting in your email. So they're just changing all the rules on how all this stuff works. So I'd love to go deeper with you because for me, I personally believe I use Google Drive in one of my workplaces, and it's so amazing how we use it. I want you to understand Google Drive in a deeper way. I think that's sort of the key to success in mastering Google. And then I'd love to be able to talk with you a little bit more about Google Docs and Google Sheets, show you sort of those basics so that you feel like, yeah, I can whip together a spreadsheet when someone needs, no problem. And then tips and tricks abound. And it's funny because those change all the time. Like there's constantly a new shortcut. Well, that workshop coming up, it starts on October 6th. And just to help you digest the time commitment, it would look like joining us for 1 hour 3 times. So just so it's not info overload, we break it into 3 1-hour sessions so that you can handle your daily dose of technology talk and then move on for the rest of the week. So the basics to get the concept in our heads is knowing you can use any device. So you could be on a Mac computer and go to Google Chrome, being the web browser. So that circle with the colors on it, that tells us this is our way to get onto the internet. We use Google Chrome for that. And it has pretty popular reviews. I hate to say it. I have a different browser that I actually like better than Chrome, but I have to confess that Chrome pretty much always works. It's pretty fast. And I think it's something like 90% of the population use Chrome over other ways to access the internet. And then understanding that Google Sheets is the equivalent of spreadsheet software. So jot this down. You could just go into your web browser, and I'm going to put it up here for you. You could just put in sheets.google.com or our word processing one. You could put in docs.google.com. Or let's say you want to do Drive. Are you catching on any product that Google has? You can get to it by navigating that way, or of course using your waffle up in the corner of your Google Chrome screen. And then Photos, Calendar, and Gmail, pieces that all integrate together. So you make your calendar talk to your Gmail. And really that's where Google becomes strong, is because they're pretty much one click flipping between Gmail and other programs. So a lot of people keep the Gmail as their home screen, and then they sort of navigate out from there. I personally prefer having Google Drive as my home base when I'm trying to access the rest of these. So if you don't do a lot with Drive, try that one out, drive.google.com, and play around in there, because it's really fun to be able to master all of your files within there. Now, I do want to give you one quick tip off the record here, and this is a freebie from our longer seminar, is do all of this through a personal Gmail account. So does anyone out there use a work Gmail account? Give me a thumbs up or down if you have to use Google for your work setting. It's good to see if you don't yet. Most workplaces are starting to bring it. Many of you have to use Google at work. So just a tip, learn to manage your Google Drive in your personal Gmail account or your personal Google account, as you will have a difficult time transferring over work documents later if you always set it up for your work profile first. So just a comment to Annie, thank you for sharing that. In rural areas, you're absolutely right, internet's not always available. So just to be mindful, one thing Google does offer, no matter what kind of device you're using, even a Chromebook that's basically only created for the internet, it works on Chromebooks too, is once you have any of your Google files, be it a spreadsheet or a word processing document, you can download it for offline use. So up under File, in whatever document you're in, you can do File, and you can make it available offline, and that lets you work hours and hours in a spreadsheet without being connected to the internet. The next time you connect your device, it's going to upload that information into the drive for you, and it'll do it automatically. So it's one of the things people love, because you could get on an airplane, turn your internet access off, and update your spreadsheet for the next 3 hours that you're on a plane. And then when you go and connect to Wi-Fi again, it's going to upload that spreadsheet back to your Google Drive so that you can access it anywhere you are. So try that out too as an option, because the wonder of Google, you can access it from North America or Africa or Japan or wherever you are. But the trick there is accessing your file for offline use. So I want to say a huge thanks for joining us today. And yes, it does auto sync, so that's a pretty awesome Google feature. And if you're at all curious about this more in-depth workshop that we're going to do, those 3 sessions, just pop onto weminterlake.ca, as you can see it there. And it lists for you when we start. I believe it starts October 6th. I'm going to pop it into the chat. That way you can copy and paste that phrase into another tab if you like. And go ahead and sign up. There's no cost to join. We'd love to have you, whether you're a guru or a beginner, whether you think you like Google or you hate it. I have those feelings every other day. It changes. Be welcome to join us. Thank you everyone for this morning. If I had the emoji button, I'd give you a huge wave. I'm delighted to be able to spend my morning with you. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and don't forget to go try that out. Go have a live chat from within your Gmail. Call your colleague or your son or your husband or wife and give someone a quick Google Meet